Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Heat Digest. On this episode, we are going to be covering all the new news that we have revolving around Jimmy Butler and how things possibly are not going too well in Miami between the two parties of Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. We'll break down the speculation, all the new news we have, the good and the bad, all in this episode of Heat Digest. But first, remember to subscribe to the channel, as 84% of you guys currently watching this video are not currently subscribed to the channel. We're on the road to 1,400 subscribers. You guys have been killing it as of late, so thank you guys so very much. We see all the love and support you guys show us, and we do appreciate it so very much. So once again, thank you guys. We would not be doing this without you guys. So again, thank you. But now let's get to it and break down. At first, we're going to start with the negative that is surrounding Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, as there is a handful of it. There's a few articles that we're first going to cover. The first one coming from NBA Central, sourcing Dan Le Batard. If you don't know who that is, he has been covering the Miami Heat as well as just sports in general, dominating the South Florida area for really a really long time. Ever since I was in at least middle school, I remember seeing this guy all over ESPN right after school, right on that 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's definitely been moved around. He's still all over ESPN. But again, Dan Le Batard says the Boston Celtics closed the Jimmy Butler window in Miami, saying, and I quote, "The Butler window just closed. The Celtics just ended the Heat as we know them." End of quote. Again, that is from Dan Le Batard on the Le Batard show. It's going to be interesting whether or not this is really accurate. I am going to go out on a limb and say I don't think it is. Yes, I think it is a respectable estimation, however you may want to label it, but I don't think this is very accurate. I don't think that the Jimmy Butler window is over. I don't think the Miami Heat are going to blow up the team in the sense of moving Jimmy Butler, whether it be to trade, just not re-signing that or not signing the contract extension that we talked about in the last video, that obviously the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler cannot go forward and try to attempt to do and complete until July 7th, almost at 11th, July 7th of this year, obviously in just 2 months, as it's now May 3rd. So again, still ways of time until the Miami Heat even have eligibility to go forward with the contract extension, if they're looking to go and do that, and they're willing to go out and do that, as we know Jimmy Butler and his team really would like to. But again, that is not the only negative connotation around another Jimmy Butler idea and really piece of news, as this one again from NBA Central, this time from David Aldridge, saying the Jimmy Butler era in Miami could be, and I quote, nearing a tipping point, end of quote, per David Aldridge. Now, this quote again from David Aldridge, saying there have been murmurings this year Butler and the Heat may no longer be singing from the same hymnal. Butler famously does things his way, and Miami's organization famously does not brook with much individualism. End of quote. Again, another negative connotation around the Jimmy Butler and Miami Heat speculation that is currently going on. We know that the news, just not even 24 hours, the Miami Heat season coming to an end. Jimmy Butler's demands, if you will, for the contract extension did come out. We did address them, and we understand that what he wants is, I'm not going to use the word acceptable, despite it may fit in correctly, but we understand that is really what we should have expected coming from Jimmy Butler. If we were going to sit down, analyze the numbers, and make a guess without Jimmy's actual information, we probably would assume that this was something, this would be the contract along these lines of what he wanted, due to the fact that Jimmy is Jimmy. Like, he's not only going to be the great player on the actual floor, offensively, defensively, but also off the floor. The ability to lead, the ability to not only lead with his voice, which we all know Jimmy's not scared of anybody. He will talk however he deems acceptable or needed. He'll do that whoever's in front of him, whether it's Pat Riley or other players. He knows he's going to come in and set the tone. He's not going to take really any bullshit. That's why everyone really loves the idea of him being in Miami, as he really fits into that Heat culture that we do have and have so much pride around. I will say, with David Aldridge's idea, this is where that quote came from, this article that he posted. The 76ers have created significant cap space this summer to add another star to play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. The solution may be a familiar face on why a reunion with Jimmy Butler via multi-team trade makes sense in at The Athletic. Again, he's writing this article for The Athletic. Do I think this is going to happen? Absolutely not. This is obviously the glaring headline the second you click on that photo, and it takes you to the Athletic page where David Aldridge did write this article titling it, Why Jimmy Butler is the Alpha. The 76ers need to pair with Joel Embiid. It's obviously David Aldridge, May 3rd, 2024. I think this is a reach by David Aldridge, the idea of the Philadelphia 76ers trying to go out and bring Jimmy back in. I don't think Jimmy would do it. I don't think and I don't believe there's a no trade clause in his contract currently. So obviously if Miami and Philly came to terms, I think Jimmy would raise hell. I think Jimmy would be absolutely not willing to go back to Philly just because, like, he's Jimmy. He doesn't want to go back there. I feel like they left on the wrong foot. Tobias Harris did come in. I just don't think it would be an appropriate move. I don't think Butler would be very happy about the idea in general. And again, I think David Aldridge is kind of looking for a reach here, wants to be a bit different than the rest of the media, who is saying that Paul George could possibly be the next wing player, big name guy to end up in another team, and that team being Philadelphia. Again, these just negative connotations around Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat is just not very enjoyable to see, especially after our season just comes to an end and now the offseason gets to a hot start as Jimmy Butler drops his demands for the contract he's expecting, or at least the extension for his contract. And now all these guys, Dan Le Batard, and then David Aldridge, two notable guys in the game of basketball who cover the game of basketball effectively, coming out and saying this stuff about the Miami Heat involving Jimmy Butler. But again, that is the negative, and now I have the positive, and this is why I think neither of those articles, neither of those quotes are really going to hold any concrete and really hold any platform going forward, besides just a fancy headline to get some clicks, and this is why. Now, this is one quote from Eric Spoelstra. I'm going to break down everything else in just a second. He said this: sometimes the greatest frustrations and disappointments can lead to the most growth. All of this can be something you gain something from. These are all lessons we can grow from. Again, that is from Coach Spo today when we had it was optional. Jimmy Butler elected not to speak in these interviews today, but we got a bunch of good quotes from a bunch of guys on the Miami Heat as well as Eric Spoelstra. Now, this is the article. I have the clip or a quote from the article as well from Ira Winderman. Eric Spoelstra speaks of enduring Heat relationship with Jimmy Butler. Duncan Robinson details playoff limitations, all on the Sun Sentinel. Yes, if you click on the photo, it will take you to the Sun Sentinel where we see this article. Now, no, I'm not going to read this entire thing. There's just about 2 or 3 things I really want to point out about this article. Now, it goes by fast, Eric Spoelstra said the partnership that began with the Heat's acquisition of Butler from the Philadelphia 76ers in the 2019 offseason, saying, and I quote, I remember my first meeting with him, and now we'll be heading into our 6th year working together. I think that's a beautiful thing. It's not something I take for granted, I can't wait for training camp. End of quote. Spoelstra's comments came in the wake of Butler missing the Heat's playoff series against the Boston Celtics due to an MCL sprain in his right knee. The comments also came 2 months before Butler, 34, is eligible to seek a 2-year contract extension. That is the contract extension we were referring to not only in last video, but also earlier in this video about that July 7th date of this year where that window opens for the Miami Heat to be able to sign the contract extension with Jimmy Butler. Obviously, we don't know if that will happen yet, but we know the number Jimmy Butler is looking for in order to get that contract extension. Now, to continue, while Butler declined to speak with the media during Friday's optional interview session at Kaseya Center, he did meet earlier in the day with Spoelstra and the Heat front office. That session apparently went well enough for Spoelstra to emerge with optimism about what might come next in the partnership with Butler that has produced 3 trips to the Eastern Conference Finals and 2 to the NBA Finals. Now, that is the end of what I wanted to pull from this article from the Sun Sentinel written by Ira Winderman, a great source. We see him all over this channel because he puts out great tweets that cover the game, or not only the game of basketball, but predominantly the Miami Heat, specifically the Miami Heat. So always a great source. You see him all the time on this channel as a great source, obviously. But again, that is what I'm referring to. The reason that the Dan Le Batard and the David Aldridge stuff is great for the idea of obviously the NBA Central going out and reposting it, and obviously these guys posting it themselves on whatever respected platform, ESPN, on their daily show with Dan Le Batard, or putting out tweets, or even then David Aldridge with The Athletic posting those articles. Again, I don't think there's going to be much concrete behind both of those takes. I think with Winderman interviewing Spo just hours after meeting with Jimmy Butler, who again did decline to speak to the media, as you can probably assume that he's just expecting to get an onslaught of questions about how the knee is, not only the knee, what are the expectations going forward, how do you feel about coming back to Miami, and it would just be a slew of questions that really never end. Just a few days into this Miami Heat offseason, I feel like Butler is going to have a surplus of time to be able to answer these questions, not only verbally, but again, he's great at throwing things out on his Instagram stories, where he really makes people really work for any type of information. So don't expect anything less than that from Jimmy Butler. But again, I just wanted to bring this video to you guys. Let me know down below what source or what article do you guys believe has any concrete to it. Do you think Dan Le Batard is onto something? Do you think the Miami Heat just had their windows closed with Jimmy Butler to the Boston Celtics after this 5-game loss to them in the first round? Do you think David Aldridge is on to something with Jimmy going back to Philadelphia? I certainly do not. I do not think Jimmy ends back up in Philadelphia at all during his career, in the years that he does have left. And then for Winderman, do you think that Spo was kind of hiding something with his answer? I will say, if you do see the actual visuals from him being interviewed, he wasn't. It looked just like he does here. He was straight faced. He doesn't look like he's lost a lot of sleep as of late. I will say he doesn't seem like he's all too upset about life right now. Obviously, he does mention earlier in the questions that he does get, no one likes to be home this early in May. That's not the objective of why we play the game of basketball, for those 82 long games during that season, and then trying to get to the playoffs, fighting for a play-in position. Obviously, we don't want to be in the position we currently are in, being at home already in the second day of May, now the third day of May. So that is really unfortunate. But again, it seems like the fighting spirit is alive in Miami. Eric Spoelstra is fully aware of it, and he understands what big question marks we have going forward. And I think that with Jimmy Butler, I believe he will still be at the helm of this Miami Heat team as this Miami Heat offseason comes to an end and next season really gets going for this Miami Heat team. But again, let me know down in the comments which one you think has any concrete to. Do you think it's all fugazi? Do you think that nothing really is going to stick? And do you think everything is going to be different in just about a few days or a week? As it seems like this NBA offseason, specifically for the Miami Heat, is going to be a freaking roller coaster. I can't wait for it. I hope it's exciting day in and day out like it has been just 3 days into it already. But again, that will be it for this episode of Heat Digest. I will see you guys on the next one.